Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Shawn. On this episode, we'll be talking about the first full week of the MLB season. We're talking the end of the NHL regular season and the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the end of the NBA season, and hopefully the Bulls don't make the playoffs, and wrapping it up with the quarterbacks of the NFL draft. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the Stars of Tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. The season is ending now, but you can get a jump start on getting tickets for next season. And jerseys, hats, and more. Head on over to icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Hey, Alex.
How's it going?
It's going well. It's nice to have baseball back in the swing of things, and to be able to have baseball on pretty much whenever I turn on my television.
I know, that really is a great feeling because late at night, if there's not like a Cubs game on, you can just turn on MLB Network and they'll cut to all sorts of good games. So just sitting around and doing that is always a good feeling. And also, you know, if I'm working on an article or two or I'm doing something on the computer, I'll have like the MLB scores up on MLB.com. It has all the scores and the game day foul along and whatnot. And you know, I have that up all the time now, usually do during the baseball season, so as you said, it feels great.
Yeah, I just purchased some tickets from a friend of mine has season tickets, and she's not able to go to some of the games because she's going to be on vacation, so I purchased all of those tickets from her during that time period, so that's fun and exciting and much cheaper than trying to buy them off the secondary market.
Yeah, we bought a couple of tickets. We just got some shipped today. My dad and I are going to a game. I think we're seeing the Blue Jays one game at Wrigley Field, and then we're seeing the Rockies, and we're going to be sitting out in the bleachers for that. So, midsummer day, two slugging teams out in the bleachers. That should be a fun one. And, you know, heck, talking about watching baseball, in the background right now, on the TV muted, I have the Marlins-Mets game, and Noah Syndergaard is pitching, and he's always really fun to watch.
Oh, with his long flowing locks.
Yeah, the only time I hate watching him is if he's pitching against the Cubs, but other than that, he's a treat to watch.
Oh yeah, he's an absolute gem. Remember all the rumors a couple years ago where every expert outside of Chicago and New York was like, oh, it's a match made in heaven. Cubs have all these hitters, and the Mets have all these pitchers they can trade. And I think both teams are very happy with where they're at right now. Well, I think the Cubs are very happy with where they're at right now.
Yeah, especially because this Mets rotation that they have, the top of the rotation is probably better than anyone else in baseball. What the Mets really need to do, honestly, is they need to get more hitting, if you want my opinion. Because you don't want to have those arms having to win games 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 every night. You need some offense to back them up, as good as they are. But with that being said, when you have a young pitching rotation like that, as we saw in 2015 with the Mets, it could take you far.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you saw how they mowed down the Cubs 2 years ago.
Yeah, they really did. And when you say mow down, I mean, we're really saying mow down. Other than Kyle Schwarber hitting some home runs and Jorge Soler getting some hits, every other Cub hitter was just overmatched that series. Everything was clicking for the Mets. Daniel Murphy was playing like a god, but that pitching was really just shutting it down.
Yeah, that pitching was phenomenal. And, I mean, last year they had injuries, but Syndergaard almost carried that team single-handedly.
Yeah, they got that wild card spot. You know, I will say there is one thing I worry about Syndergaard. He's the guy who is just a flamethrower. And sometimes you worry about that because sometimes those flamethrowers don't have as long of a shelf life.
I mean, they can't. I mean, Nolan Ryan and Roger Clemens did, but, you know, that was a completely
Nolan
different
Ryan
era.
was a freak of nature.
And Roger Clemens was juicing, so.
Right. I mean, I'm not saying he won't. I'm just saying it would be a concern of mine. But as of right now, Noah Syndergaard is as good as they come.
Yeah, and that wild card game was a really great pitching duel.
Yeah, and you know, the Giants won that game. Madison Bumgarner pitched a complete game shutout. But I'd say Noah Syndergaard was more dominant in that game.
Oh, he was great.
Yeah, it was Georges Familia that gave up the 3-run home run. And, you know, when you're striking out a lot of guys and they're not touching the ball, you know, you're going to throw a lot of pitches. And with Madison Bumgarner, he was just kind of getting efficient outs, getting a lot of weak contact, not as much the strikeout variety. The team played some good defense behind him where Noah Syndergaard was just striking out guy after guy. So eventually he had to come out and they had to go to the bullpen, and unfortunately for the Mets, that didn't work.
Pretty much. I've actually been pulling up the box score. It was, here's the line from Syndergaard. 7 innings pitched, 2 hits, 10 strikeouts.
Yeah, that's some really good pitching right there. And Noah Syndergaard just struck out his second guy in the first inning on this game, so he continues his ways. Really got to be heartbreaking for the Mets after that one, but, you know, it was the Cubs' year, so the Mets were really banged up, and a lot of people wanted to face the Mets in the division series last year, but I didn't want to see them again. After what they did the year before, I just wouldn't want to put my marbles against the Mets, which is funny because you had the Giants going on their even thing. So, you know, hey, either way they won, but I would hate to have to deal with that pitching again if they're healthy in the postseason.
The worst thing for me, if I would have been Noah Syndergaard, is knowing that home run was by Connor Gillespie.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't Brandon Belt, it wasn't Buster Posey, it wasn't Hunter Pence. It was Connor Gillespie.
Yep. Yep. Connor Gillespie.
Former White Sox Connor Gillespie.
Yep. Who was cast off from the White Sox. But, I mean, Syndergaard was just so dominant in that game. Just so... It would have been... I mean, I think the Cubs would have just still dominated that series, but I don't know if they would have been able to beat Syndergaard.
No, probably not, because Neil deGrom was hurt. I think Wheeler was hurt. And Harvey was really struggling after having a few injuries. So he wasn't the Harvey he was when he first came into the league. Because if you remember, when he came into the league as a rookie, he was bringing the Mets back to life, more or less. They were getting recognized again because of his pitching. But last year, he was really struggling after those injuries because he's had some injuries. He's already had Tommy John surgery. So they probably could have beaten him then. They also had Bartolo Colon, who the Cubs have pretty good numbers against, but Syndergaard, that would have been tough.
Yeah, and plus, Matt Harvey is kind of like the David Wright of their pitching staff, where he's like really well known and has been there for a while, but he just injuries just kind of made him a shell of himself last year.
David Wright is a guy who I think if he never would have gotten hurt, could have been a Hall of Fame pitcher. I really do. Not pitcher, hitter. Hall of Fame third baseman. I really think he could have been. But the amount of injuries he's suffered over the years, it's unbelievable. When's the last time he's played a full season?
Has he ever? Remember when he was wearing?
Recent.
Remember when he was wearing that like helmet protector on his helmet?
Yeah, I do.
He looked like the Great Kazoo from the Flintstones.
Yeah. He was doing everything he could in his power to not get hurt, and yet he still got hurt. I cannot imagine how frustrating it must be for that guy, knowing how good he is.
Yeah, he looked like when like a 3-year-old put on his dad's hat.
Pretty much. Pretty much.
David Wright. So, Cubbies. Two series up, 2 series down, 2 series wins. I
can't complain.
We talked about last episode the opening game, but they had their other 2 games against the Cardinals. The game 2 of the season and game 2 of that series, Arrieta looked pretty good. I mean, he didn't give up hardly any runs. No earned runs. He had one unearned run. 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts, only 2 walks. Looked great. The only thing is his fastball speed was down a good amount.
Yeah, they were talking about that a lot because they were saying how his average fastball the last few years, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were all at least 93.7 or something. Like last year was 94 point something. 2014 it was 93 point something. Whereas the last 2 games he's played this year, they've been averaging at basically 90-91. So there has been a lot of talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, and whenever you have like a drop in fastball, which, happens once you're in your 30s, which Jake Arrieta is, it usually is not that significant of a drop-off. It's usually like, half mile an hour to a mile an hour per season. This was a pretty precipitous drop.
Yeah, because Jake Arrieta, even in his Baltimore days, he was known for having better than average velocity. There are a lot of different thoughts about it. There were some thoughts how he's, quote-unquote, changing his approach, trying to do more location and movement than speed. There are some people saying he's trying to throw more hard change-ups. But the thing is, I haven't seen, maybe I just didn't notice, but I haven't seen a fastball today at 94 or 93. Maybe there was one around 93, but I haven't seen one 94, 95. Maybe 1 or 2 happened because, I don't look at the velocity of every single pitch, but basically when I looked up, granted he threw a lot of breaking stuff today, his bread and butter was his breaking stuff, but still, when he threw something more straight, like a fastball, it was really around 91, and, it's something to think about. Yeah,
and it could also be just warming up into the season that the Cubs veteran pitchers didn't get much work in the spring training.
Sure.
So it might be just, if this is happening by mid-season, it's something to be, not concerning for the Cubs because he's probably not going to be here next year, but it's got to be concerning to Jake Arrieta, his agent, and would-be suitors.
Right. Now, of course, the question you also have to ask is, if it's working, how much of a concern is it? If he's still getting outs and not giving up runs, how concerning is it?
Now, I think the concern is not that if it's working, it's great, but what if he has another precipitous drop next year?
Right.
Does it work? That's just got to be a little scary if you're going to invest $30 million a year in a pitcher.
Right, and that he's going to attract some attention if he keeps going the way he does this year. And this year it's only 2 starts, but if he keeps doing what he's been doing the past 2 games, people are going to want him, and people are going to be putting some money on the table. And his agent knows, I don't know, is he a Scott Boras guy? Do you know?
I believe he is.
Yeah, and with Scott Boras, he's going to want to earn some cash. So it will be interesting to see. And it's kind of funny because I watch Arrieta and I root for him to do great every game. But I also know at the same time that he's probably not going to be with us next year unless something really wacky happens. But again, that's really kind of a stretch. So, I hope he does well for the Cubs' sake and that he can get a good deal somewhere and continue to pitch well because, he was part of that World Series team and he was a really exciting Cy Young winner in 2015. You know, we'll see. Maybe he gets his velocity back. Maybe not full, but maybe he starts averaging 92, upper 92 into 93. But yeah, if it keeps at this way, then sure, I could see some people being somewhat concerned.
Absolutely. And, I mean, right now, he's pitching great. Only 2 games, you're right, small sample size, but he's looked good. No earned runs in that game against the Cardinals, and went 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, and 3 earned runs against Milwaukee, who's hitting the ball.
Yeah, they are. And they're hitting it out of the park.
Yeah. So, yeah, the game 2 against the Cardinals, we had some big dividends paid from having Albert Almora in center field.
Oh, yeah.
Taking that home run away from Matt Adams. And the best part about it is the Cardinals fans were just ready to erupt, and then they went, "Huh, now we're back to reality, being living in St. Louis."
Yeah, that was an awesome catch, because as soon as Matt Adams stepped to the plate, I get that gut feeling. I'm like, here we go. This game will be tied. He'll homer. And he launches it. I'm like, oh, crap, there it is. Then there's Almora, who just jumps up and gets it. I think that the Cubs, and I'm going to say this. I think the Cubs are going to benefit more with having Albert Almora than Dexter Fowler, especially defensively. I really do.
I mean, Dexter Fowler was, prior to last year, was a below average center fielder. Last year was probably his best statistically fielding season.
Yeah, and it wasn't even great. It was average, really.
Albert Almora is a far superior defensive center fielder, so you're benefiting in that way. And Almora's been hitting really well to start. Really well.
Did you see the video on Twitter? I think it was Cubs Insider that posted it. It was comparing his swing to the swing of Manny Ramirez. Now, is Albert Almora ever going to be as legendary of a hitter as Manny Ramirez? I'm going to say no. I really doubt it. Even if he could be really good, I don't think he'll ever be Manny Ramirez level, because that talent comes once in a generation. But it's got to show you something. It's got to show you that his swing and the way he can work is really, really fantastic.
He was the first pick by this management group with Jed and Theo. Very first pick.
That's right, and there was some doubt in 2015, early 2016, what his fate was going to be. Some people said, well, he might be the guy that doesn't work out, because you heard about Almora early on, because that was the first big pick. Then you had guys like Schwarber, and you had Bryant, and you had Soler, and you had Baez. They kind of came into the mix, and you kind of forgot about Albert Almora. And then he popped up again. And then Cubs fans went, oh yeah, there's Albert Almora. Oh yeah, he's pretty good. Wow, he's got a good ceiling. I like this guy.
Yeah, and he was the one everyone thought, well, you can't hit on everybody. And
exactly.
It's looking like maybe you can.
And so far, so good in his very young career.
Yeah, absolutely. And also in that game, you had RBIs by Baez and Hayward. And Hayward's new swing is starting to look pretty good.
He could have been 5 for 5 today.
Yeah, I mean, last year he had you knew that if there was a runner on first, it was going to be a double play.
Right.
Unless he was able to beat out the throw, or there was fielder's choice, or error, but he was going to hit it ground ball to the second baseman.
Yeah, it was going to be as routine as you can get. And
this year he's got some elevation under that ball when he hits it. It's he still looks awkward up at the plate, but when he's making contact, he's lifting the ball instead of driving it straight into the ground. He's lifting it, and you're seeing a lot more line drives.
You're also seeing him go oppo too a lot more.
I mean, if he's able to keep that defense honest but not having to shift, and he's able to hit line drives, this this is going to be a really dangerous lineup because pretty much most people agree that this is going to be a dangerous lineup, assuming that Hayward was going to be an automatic out. Now, if he can bat 275 with a, mid to upper 300 on base percentage, then suddenly that's a game changer.
Put this into perspective. Last year, the Cubs lost Schwarber for the regular season, and Hayward had a really, really, really bad season at the plate. They won 103 games without that. This year, you hopefully have Schwarber throughout the season, no injuries. If Jason Hayward keeps doing what he's doing, plus another year of experience for Bryant and Russell and Rizzo as he hits his top prime, it's pretty awesome. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and when you've moved to relegate your World Series MVP to being a sub.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, because Baez is pretty much now the regular second base guy.
Yeah, because they want his defense in there, and they want it badly because he's a stud.
Absolutely, and he looks, he looks better at the plate. Every at bat he looks better and better. He's still going to be a strikeout guy, but he looks like a much better hitter when he's up there.
Sure,
you
absolutely.
think back to when he was first brought up, when it was just like, it's either going to be a bomb home run, or it was basically the last years of Sammy Sosa up there. It was either going to be a home run or an ugly strikeout.
Yeah, because if you went like high fastball every time on Baez in 2014, 10 times out of 10 he'd chase it and miss it. Also, you had the sliders down and away, the breaking balls in the dirt. He would chase everything, whether it was up, whether it was down, whether it was wide. But if he did hit it, it was going 450 feet.
Yeah. And now he's able to hit him back up the middle. He's able to go opposite field. He's still got that power, but more line driveys. It's nice to see, and I hope that he can continue to development because he still does have holes in that swing. But if he can be a more consistent hitter, then he's going to be a really valuable commodity.
Yeah, I don't think he'll ever be an above average on base guy. If you look at the Fangraphs average on base, that's about 320. I don't see him getting over 320. I could see him having batting averages of 275, maybe 280. I think he's more of a 265, 270 hitter throughout a full season. Definitely double-digit home runs. But, he's not going to draw a lot of walks. But as long as he's having better at-bats and he's not striking out on 3 pitches, that's all good things to have. Because in a day and age where the pitch count is so important, you want to have as many long at-bats as you can. And that's what partially makes this Cubs team so great, is that they do that constantly.
Absolutely. And then the third game of that series against the Cardinals, Lackey looked rough that first inning.
Yeah, to be fair to him, Zobrist booted the easiest double play ball, but yeah.
But then he buckled down after that and went 5 scoreless.
He looked great after it. He really looked great.
Yeah, and but then you also had the really odd play. I think it was in the 7th inning where there was a dropped third strike, and Yadier Molina couldn't find the ball, and it stuck to his chest protector.
Never seen that before.
No, I've never ever seen that, and I have no idea. The only thing in my mind is that he had some sort of substance on there.
Yeah, there had to be something on the ball or the chest protector. There had to be something.
Why in the world wouldn't that umpire want to look at that? And if
that's
he
kind
didn't,
of what I wanted to know.
Yeah, and if he didn't, why wasn't Rob Manfred on the phone going, we want to check that out. We want to take a look at that.
Yeah, because, I mean, maybe they wouldn't have done anything initially, but at least, like, they just kind of shrugged it off and kept moving on. I mean, I'd be a little suspicious about that. You know, maybe he didn't do anything illegal, but I at least want to look at it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there was underhanded dirtiness in there, but if something really weird happens, nobody wants to take more than a fourth of a second look. Then just like, don't you at least want to take that ball off and then rub your finger on it? Like, at the very least.
Yeah, check the ball too. Check the ball. Check the chest plate, because there were other people trying to think of other scenarios, and you can't really find it. It didn't get stuck in a groove or anything because it was just flat on the chest. The
And
chance
those grooves aren't big enough to even hold the
Right.
ball.
Right. And, you know, I don't... this is a real stretch. I can't see a seam, like a seam string, getting caught on anything, because it just doesn't seem possible.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have no clue, and it's one of those mysteries of what really happened. And baseball wasn't interested enough to know, and part of me is just things that, like, they just want to close their eyes and go la 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 la, so there's no issues, because if they find something, then they've got a scandal on their hands.
Right, and in a time they're trying to, like, expand baseball in the fans, get more youth, that's not something you want to have happen to you.
Yeah, and as much as I don't like them, the Cardinals are a storied franchise in baseball, and Yadier Molina is an important, probably one of, if not the most important player on that team. And he just signed a 3-year, $60 million extension. So, like, baseball is just, they don't want that scandal at all.
No, they really don't. I mean, would you want to, if you were trying to expand your product, trying to promote it, you wouldn't want something like that? I mean, another argument that I've heard about this whole thing is, has it really been specified what the rules are for chest protectors and substances? Because there are a number of things you could put on to make something sticky. You know, maybe it's pine tar, maybe it's something else. So it's kind of a matter of what was on it and what did it fall under in kind of the whole baseball code. Because with pine tar, over the years, it's kind of like, well, it's not so much how much or what it is, or like how much it is. Like, you can only have so much pine tar on a bat. Is there a rule about how much you could have on other things? You know, I don't know. That's kind of what I want to know.
You just can't have pine tar further up. You can have as much as you want at a certain height. Because remember I don't know if you're probably way too young to remember the George Brett pine tar.
Oh, I know
bat
that incident. Yeah, went crazy. I mean, that's what I meant by too much, as in, like, only cover a certain area. That's what I meant by that. But whenever I hear pine tar, that's the first thing I think about is the George Brett incident.
Yeah, I just pick the face when he just goes charging out there to murder everybody.
It's like he goes from just, like, complete poker face to, like, raging.
I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Chris Berman. There was, like, a famous, like, sportscaster that was telling a story about George Brett, how he was on an elevator with them, and they were going to a steakhouse after a game, and George Brett pooped his pants in the elevator.
Oh, that's funny.
He had to go change his pants because he pooped his pants in the elevator.
Oh, jeez. I'd hate to be in that elevator.
I know, right? All right, so the Cubs... Oh, and after that, Kyle Schwarber bombs that 3-run homer, which was fantastic to see.
Exit velocity of, I think it was 117 miles an hour. Either 112 or 117, but it was over 110.
Yeah, he clobbered that ball. And that really led to Cubs winning that series. Should have swept it, but I'm not going to be greedy. We'll take 2 of 3. And then they move on to the series against Milwaukee, and the unknown of the of the rotation for the Cubs, Brett Anderson, comes in and throws a gem in that first game.
Yeah, I was very, very happy with his performance. Now, that game as a whole angered me to no end, but his performance was really, really encouraging to see, because with a guy who's so injury-prone, at that age, you don't know what you're going to get always. But he had some really good movement on his pitches, and he was getting a lot of nice weak ground outs or pop outs, and a few Ks too, so overall, you really gotta like what you see from him so far.
And listening and talk after the game, and listening to Chris Bosio talk as well, both of them are just like front of their mind is the injury history and what are they going to do to mitigate injuries. So I don't think that they're going into this lightly. I think Brett Anderson absolutely doesn't want to go through another injury-plagued season. The Cubs don't want it, and they're going about it in a really good way of trying to, as best as you can, prevent injuries.
Yeah, because you really want to be part of something special, especially with a team like this. You don't want to get hurt again. You really want to be part of this. So, you know, maybe he'll get through a whole season. Maybe he will. I don't know. He hasn't done it in God knows when, but maybe we'll finally see him get through a full season. And maybe if he misses a start or two, you could still count that.
Yeah, I mean, if you expect a pitcher to miss a couple of starts here and there. It's just if they have to miss multiple starts in a row, or if they go on an extensive injured time period, that's what you don't want to see. Or you don't want to see multiple missed starts over several times, like missed these 2 games in a row, and then a month later missed these 2 games. Like, you just want to make sure that you're not having that. And there's only so much you can do to prevent these things, but taking extra care to give him the rest. If he's feeling any sort of issues, giving him extra medical treatments and ice downs and days off if he needs it. They're very cognizant of it, which is nice to see, and really trying to maintain a strong staff, because they're better as a staff with Brett Anderson in there pitching as a ground ball pitcher to a good defense than Mike Montgomery as a starter.
Yeah, and maybe with Brett Anderson in the starting rotation, maybe he learns a few things Mike Montgomery does with him. Mike Montgomery is something interesting to talk about, because though he gave up both walk-offs in losses, he was really good the first 2 innings in Milwaukee. I mean, really good. And if Brett Anderson can stay healthy, maybe he learns under him. They pitch kind of similar styles. It could be a good thing to have another veteran lefty to help groom not really upcoming, because he's played over a year, but still, it's good to have that veteran lefty presence to help groom some other guys.
And that game was just other than Brett Anderson's performances, you alluded to it earlier, it was frustrating as a fan to watch.
Yeah.
Just the way it ended, the Cubs hitters, to watch Bryant be in a slump, Rizzo be in a slump, so many players in this, other than basically Contreras, Hayward, and Almora. Most everybody's in a slump.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of swinging and missing at pitches right down the middle. There was a lot of weak pop-ups and flyouts. There was a lot of swinging at balls that weren't even close to the strike zone. I mean, they grounded into how many double plays? 3 that night? And what made it so frustrating...
Yeah, how many men were left on base?
A lot. A lot. Especially, was it the 10th inning? When they had the bases loaded, 1 out, and Zobrist grounded into the double play?
Yeah, it was.
I think it was the 10th inning.
I think it was the 10th. If I remember correctly, didn't they have the bases loaded twice in extra innings? It was bad. It was really bad to watch. And you're like, against Milwaukee.
That was the worst part. It was against these trash arms. Now, if this was happening against Madison Bumgarner or something, you'd be like, well, what can you say? He's the best of the best. But this was Jimmy Nelson and Jared Hughes and
Yeah,
some other Milwaukee guys.
In an 11-inning game, the Cubs had no players with multiple hits, and they only had 6 total hits in the game.
And some of those hits were just kind of bloopers or infield singles. The only ball that was really hit hard the entire game was Ben Zobrist hit that solo home run. I think it was the second or third inning. It was early in the game. He hits that solo home run, make it 1-0 early. That was really only the hard hit ball of that game. It seemed like everything else was just soft stuff. Soft contact, whether it was a bloop for a hit the few times or weak groundouts.
Yeah, it was a really ugly game, and it made me nervous about just the tone that the team is setting early in the season. But then they bounced back the game 2 against the Cardinals. Against the Brewers. And you're like, all right, you feel good because Hendricks is on the mound. And although he didn't have a very good game, you had Almora and Bryant combined for 6 hits and 5 RBIs. Those bats really came alive, and they just clobbered the Brewers.
Yeah, we were kind of like, okay, this is what we're used to seeing. This is what we wanted to see. Here we go. Chris Bryant's finally swinging the bat. You're seeing a bit more better at-bats than the night before. You're not swinging at as much junk as you were the night before. And, it was frustrating early on because they were down 2-0 in that game. Kyle Hendricks got ahead 0-2 to a guy. I think it was Jonathan Villar. He's their leadoff hitter. And then he leaves right over the top in the heart of the plate, a pitch that he drives out of the park. So I'm thinking, oh, here we go again with Milwaukee. And then everything changed. Thank goodness.
Yeah, with Hendricks, it's kind of his MO last year was giving up an early run on like a solo home run and then just lights out the rest of it. And you're like, okay, he had this guy down 0-2, had a bad pitch. He's going to work out of this. And he ended up with giving up 4 earned runs, 2 home runs, and, not the worst performance, but not a good performance either. But just the Cubs bats came to life and really, really carried the team in that game.
Yeah, you look at Kyle Hendricks' outing, and what I saw was take away the second 2-run home run he gave up. From innings like 2 to 4, because I think the home run was hit in like the 5th inning, but he had some really good quick innings that what we're used to seeing Kyle Hendricks do. His biggest mistake was the 2 home runs. The one in the first inning, like I talked about, leaving that 0-2 pitch right there, and then giving up the home run in the middle of the game to tie it at 4 at the time. But you look at everything else. He was looking like Kyle Hendricks, so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, first start of the season, he may give up some hard-hit balls, but other than that, you still think and are convinced that he'll be where he was last year and he'll be doing some real good things.
Yeah, even if he has a regression, his ERA was so ridiculously low last year that there's plenty of room between what he did last year and a very good ERA. And
who the hell expected that last year, a 2.13 ERA?
Not even his parents expected that.
I know. For a guy who hits maybe 87, 88 on the gun, maybe he hits 90 every now and then, but that's why they call him Greg Maddux 2.0. He doesn't use the speed, he changes the speed, and he uses the location, because last night he was throwing some changeups that were devastating. The way they tailed down and away, or just starting up in the zone and then tailing down at the last second. Or the way the breaking ball was right at the corner, just breaking as soon as it crossed over the plate. It's mind-boggling to see how he's able to control that so well.
Yeah, and, watching him, he gets in a rhythm, too. And part of what he does is not just changing speed, but he works in a rhythm and keeps the hitters off balance and at his own pace, and that works to his advantage as well. So I'm not worried about Kyle Hendricks, but it was not what you expected that game They got some solid hits off of him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll be really dominant in his next start. I'm really confident about that. He just needed to shake off a little rust. He'll be fine. No worries. Keeps doing what he's doing. Good things will happen.
And then Game 3 of the series was earlier today, and Arrieta got a reshuffled start because John Lester's going to open the home opener, the banner raising ceremony. And Arrieta looked pretty good. 7 innings, 10 strikeouts, 3 earned runs. Had a home run by Zobrist, home run by Schwarber, and Hayward just swinging the bat really well.
Yeah, that was really awesome to see. It was just frustrating that Hayward was 2 for 5 in a game that could have been 5 for 5. He had a home run taken away early, so it would have been close. Definitely would have been extra bases at the top of the wall, but you had that taken away. You had a diving catch by Ryan Braun that would have been a 2-run double, and you had a single on the infield that was dove for and taken away there. So he hit the ball hard every single time. And that 2-run double he had in the first inning was a thing of beauty. The sound off the bat, the way it traveled and hit off the base of the wall in the gap, it was... if you're a huge baseball fan like me, it is baseball porn right there. Seeing him do that was just awesome.
Yeah, and the thing is, with last year, it wasn't about his batting average. That wasn't what concerned me. It was just how he either struck out or softly hit a bouncer to second base. That was what it was bothersome to me. Is I don't care if a guy's batting 100. It's if he's hitting hard liners and they just happen to be where somebody is. That doesn't faze me because that gives you an opportunity every time, and that keeps them honest. Their pitchers have to work to get you out because they know you're making contact. It's just when you look uncomfortable at the plate and you're not making good contact at all, like he did last year. This year, he's making much more contact, and it looks so much more clean. It looks so much better.
Yeah, and you know what's really, really cool is that Jason Hayward, he is such a good base runner. So the more you get him aboard, the more good things he'll do on the base paths. So if he keeps doing what he's doing, imagine what he can do, what he's doing on the base paths when he's getting on more often. I mean, that's a very underrated part of his game.
Oh, and I think that's one of the best parts of his game is he's not, I mean, it's not like he's Ricky Henderson out there stealing, or Vince Coleman stealing every base, but he's fast enough, he's athletic enough, and he's a smart base runner. Just very heads up, and that's what you need. Is I'm not so concerned about stealing every base, but heads up base running and being smart on the base paths.
If you want to see his numbers for his base running, go to Fangraphs and look at his UBR stats. UBR is ultimate base running. Ultimate base running. It's a really good stat that measures the efficiency of how someone runs the bases. It kind of goes along with the whole idea of how he greater generates runs by running the bases and how often he, scores runs, advances bases, doesn't make outs on the base paths. It takes all that stuff together and puts it into one basically stat. It's like the wins above replacement of base running. So if you want to see how good those numbers are, you got to go on Fangraphs.com and check them out because it will tell you. And you look at the ultimate base running leaders throughout the years, you see Jason Hayward up there along with the defensive runs saved leaders in the defensive metrics. So his value is there. It's so there, and that's why he is worth that money.
Yeah, he was worth the money for the most part, with what he did last year. But if you're adding what he's doing this year, he's well worth the money. He very, very much is.
I mean, look at what kind of a guy he is. Look at his leadership. That's got to tell you something right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a leader. He's He made the whole defensive outfield better with his play. Smart base running. His base running was important in the postseason. It just, you just needed him to make a little bit better contact, and that's what you're seeing now.
Not only that, when you see him swing, and you see him swing in certain counts, you can tell he's not trying to, force it, because last year you could tell how frustrated he was getting, and as the season went along, you saw that in addition to all the groundouts, he was also hitting a lot of pop-ups, not squaring up the ball, either getting under it or getting over it, as he did more often than not. Now he seems more relaxed at the plate. He seems more willing to take some pitches, and he's always been a good patient on-base guy, but you definitely see the difference in his approach from last year and this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It just looks a lot different, and it's nice is if you pull up statistics from him over his career and you do it by month, is he's pretty much been a very, very slow starter all of April, even into the beginning of May. That's when you start seeing his numbers elevate. And if you're seeing numbers now that look good this early, that bodes well for him going forward.
Absolutely. And it's great that he's building this confidence and doing what he's doing right now. Because last year, we sat around and we waited. We said, okay, when's he going to come around? I guarantee you he comes around next week. I'll guarantee you he comes around next month. I'll guarantee you he comes around when the weather is warmer. I'll guarantee you he comes around on this road trip. I'll guarantee you when he comes around when the wind blows out. We kept saying that over and over and over, and thinking of these scenarios when his bat's finally going to come around. Right now what he's doing, he's establishing that he is ready to rebound after last season right off the bat.
Yeah, and I was just pulling up his UBR scores, and his 6 is excellent, and 0 is average. And let's see, in 2010 he was a 2.7. In 2012 he was a 6.3. In 2015 he was a 3.1, and last year he was a 1.4. So he's a very good pace runner.
And you got to keep in mind last year, his UBR was low because he wasn't on base nearly as much as he usually is. So if he was on base more, I guarantee you that number would be up. So this year, if he is on base more than 330% of the time, I guarantee you his UBR will be at least above 2. I'm putting that and betting it right now.
Oh yeah, it's going to be at least 2.5, at least.
Sure.
But the one concerning thing so far in the season is, for the Cubs, and from my perspective, is some of the defensive gaffes that you didn't see last year. I mean, there was the Baez missed double play, and that was a fluke thing with the white backdrop. The Zobrist missed the gaff on the double play attempt. Baez and Hayward, two of the best defenders in all of baseball, colliding.
That was scary. That looks really bad when it happened at first.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's my perception thing. I've never read a study about it or seen statistics pulled on it, but it's never a good sign when you have an infielder and outfielder collide in a game. That always screams dysfunctional team to me. And I know that's not the case in this instance. I mean, I'm sure part of it was two guys not yelling, and maybe one guy's, the slight language barrier. I mean, I know Javi Baez speaks English, but not his first language.
Right. I think that was a little tough because that ball was kind of hitting no man's land, because that's an area where you see a lot of infielders go out and you see a lot of infielders come in. It wasn't as much like the Schwarber-Fowler collision, which, by the way, was on the same exact date. Did you know that?
No.
April 7th. Same exact date. that happened. Isn't that weird?
That's really odd.
Yeah, but, that was kind of more of a miscommunication because, as people know, the center fielder is the captain of the outfield. When you have an infielder and a right fielder coming together, it's a little more difficult. Where that ball was hit was a little more difficult. But nevertheless, you don't want to see that happen. Luckily, nothing bad did happen because Baez was in the lineup the next day. That could have been, serious injury for two of your essential guys. I mean, could you imagine if that would have happened? I mean, there were people panicking about the Cubs on day one when they didn't win. Imagine them not only losing that game, but losing Hayward and Baez for an extended period of time. I mean, we'd see people jumping into the Chicago River.
You would. You really would. So let's move on a little bit and same sport talk a little bit of White Sox. I know we're both Cubs fans. I've only watched little bits and pieces of the White Sox so far.
Same.
They've had 2 rainouts already, but the weird thing is their ace of their squad, Quintana, has pitched 2 not so good games so far, and you've gotten fantastic starts from James Shields and Holland and Miguel Gonzalez. You're like, what's going on? What is this bizarro world?
I was thinking the same thing. Because, Jose Quintana today, he was much better. The offense didn't hit for him, but, sky is blue, water's wet. His first game, though, he was giving up bombs, and you're thinking, geez, what's wrong with this guy? And my brother and I were both getting frustrated because combined we have 4 fantasy teams, 2 each, and we have him on both our teams. So we were like, Quintana, what are you doing, man? So there was that. But yeah, it's kind of funny because James Shields, from the box score I saw, looked like James Shields of his Tampa Bay Rays days.
Yeah, and that's, if you are the White Sox brass, you've got to be really happy with these pitchers because, don't think for a second that they're not going to flip Miguel Gonzalez and Holland and Shields if they can. They're going to put them on that block for, trade deadline type guys as rental players for a team down the stretch.
Someone will pick up Holland for sure. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And Miguel Gonzalez will probably generate some interest too. James Shields, even if he pitches okay, my only question is, will people want to break on that contract? Because it's a big contract.
It is a big contract, but if you're the White Sox, your payroll's pretty low. Why wouldn't you just eat that to get a pick?
That's true.
Because if you eat most of that money and make it, an affordable contract, somebody will give you a prospect for him, and you're just basically buying a prospect. And if you're the White Sox, eat that money. Eat that money. It's kind of like Cleveland Browns with basically buying a draft pick from the Houston Texans and to take on the Osweiler contract. If you got the money, eat it up. Because you're trying to get better anyway.
Yeah, and now my question is, and maybe you could look this up for me, what his contract status is right now with the Sox, because I know at least half of it is being paid by the Padres still. What I want to know is how many years does he have left? If he only has a few years left, it's very, very, very easy to eat that money because the White Sox, they're not going to be contending this year. They're probably not going to be contending next year, but I'm feeling they're going to start making their move towards contention in about 3 years. And 3 years, there's going to be some guys available. Let's just say that. A number of decent names available. So that's when you're going to want to have all the money you want to start spending.
Here we go. He has this year, next year, and a 2019 option with a $2 million buyout. He's making $21 million this year, $21 million next year, and $16 million for 2019. San Diego is paying $10 million this year, and $10 million next year, and they'll pay the whole $2 million buyout in 2019 if they want. So basically, The White Sox are paying $11 million. So it'd be $22 million for these 2 seasons. If the White Sox pay $10 million of that remaining 22, a team would be trading for a starting pitcher, paying $6 million a year on that contract. That is really reasonable. And, for a $10 million investment to bring back a prospect and still save $12 million, that's got to be something the White Sox have to think about.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you get an offer for something that's not great, but something, if you have the option to either take that little something or just kind of keep him for no reason, you take that little something. In this scenario, if this has to be a scenario for the Sox this year where every veteran player is up for grabs. That means Abreu, that means Frazier, that means Melky, that means Shields, that means pretty much their entire pitching staff right now. Basically, if you look at the roster right now, every single person except for Tim Anderson and Omar Narvaez should be up for grabs.
But it's been really funny. So the first game, White Sox players struck out 11 times. Quintana gave up 6 earned runs in 5 innings. And you're like, all right, this is a bad team we're seeing here. I mean, I know they're facing Verlander, but this is not a good team. And then they come back with game 2. James Shields looks great. Giovanni Soto. It's 2 home runs in an 11-2 win.
God, I loved him in 2008. Let me tell you.
And you're like, all right, well, what's going on here? And then game 1 against the Twins, and Holland goes 6 innings, gives up 2 runs. And you're like, all right, they've got a chance here. But the bats couldn't figure out Phil Hughes. White Sox have 8 strikeouts versus 7 hits. And you can't have those numbers flipping like that. But then the game 2 of that series is you have Avi Garcia and Giovanni Soto again.
Aviseo Garcia, for goodness sake.
Giovanni Soto in 2017 has 3 home runs already. And you have that gem by Miguel Gonzalez. And today, Quintana didn't look terrible, but he didn't look great either. But it was just the bats. Bats went cold until the 9th inning, and they had an opportunity to win that game.
Yeah, it's really a funny situation with them. It's almost like... Have you ever seen the movie Major League?
Yes.
Great movie, one of my favorites. It reminds me of Rachel Phelps saying, like in the middle of the movie, they're bad, but they're not bad enough.
That's literally, that was the point I was going to make. Is I make like notes that I want to talk about. The point I was about to bring up was this team is too good to lose.
But they're not good enough to be a force.
Yeah, they are, and it's a really funny thing that was a perfect analogy you had there with Major League. Is this team? They're not good. But there's teams that are way worse than them.
Yes.
Unless they start dumping players, they're gonna find themselves in a tough position of trying to rebuild without having that first or second pick in the draft.
Well, this is what I wanted to talk to you about because I was thinking about this the other day. There's kind of this hashtag called Tank for Beer because Seth Beer is this young stud that a lot of people want. And that's what a lot of White Sox fans are saying, Tank for Beer, as they should. Because I'll make this point later about Sox fans, but, I think to myself, yeah, you could aim for that, but if you want to aim for that, start playing worse. Because I could name several teams that I think have worse rosters than the White Sox. And you probably can too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are just bad teams. And one of them's actually playing pretty well, but Philadelphia is a bad team.
Oh, that's not going to last. They do it every year. When they're bad, they always get off to a good start and then they just they fall off a cliff.
Yeah, Atlanta's bad. You're gonna see a couple teams in the Cubs division just sink. Probably
The Reds.
Fastest. The Reds. Reds are gonna. I mean, they're 4-2 right now, but they're gonna just bottom out. And
yep.
Pittsburgh or Milwaukee, one of those teams is just going to really bottom out. San Diego is not a good team.
San Diego is probably the worst team on paper.
So you've got some bad teams. Oakland's not a good team.
Tampa's not a good team.
Tampa is not a good team. Kansas City, they've got good players, but time's not on their side. They could be pretty bad.
The Angels are bad.
Angels are bad.
Except for Mike Trout.
Yeah. So there's some teams that are bad, and the White Sox need to be worse. And the Cubs made it seem easy the way they did it, and there was so much luck involved and a lot of hard work that went unnoticed behind the scenes. And part of it is, to have a guy like Anthony Rizzo, who was with you during the really bad seasons and then still with you when you win the World Series, to be able to keep those players happy and excited to play for your team through those bad years. It's a tough thing.
Right, because that 2012 Cubs team was wretched. Wretched, wretched, wretched. What do you say we have a little fun and look up that roster, and we could think about how many guys are still on this team to kind of make the point. The first year of a rebuild, you have to be 98 to 100 loss terrible. You really do.
Yeah. You've got to be bad. And the White Sox are not a good team, but they've got enough. I mean, Melky Cabrera is a professional hitter. Is he going to lead you to a World Series? No. But is he going to keep your team in a game? Probably. There's some just bad teams, and you're not going to just magically get the best player in the draft. If you're drafting 7th, 6th, you need to be up there 1-2.
Yeah, the White Sox, their ideal scenario would be like at least top 4. At least.
The Cubs 2012 40-man roster. Darwin Barney, Jeff Baker, Asensio, Jason Birkin, Michael Bowden, Marlon Byrd, Alberto Cabrera, Shawn Camp, Tony Campana, Adrian Cardenas, Lendy Castillo, Wellington Castillo, Starlin Castro, Jay Chapman, Steve Clevenger, Casey Coleman, Manny Corpus, David DeJesus, whose wife is hot.
Yes.
Ryan Dempster, Blake DeWitt, Rafael Dolis, Matt Garza, Justin Hermano.
Justin Hermano, my guy! Oh, he was awful.
Coy Hill, Alex
Hill.
Hinshaw.
Who?
Alex Hinshaw.
Okay, that's a name I don't remember.
I don't remember that one either. I'm just reading it. So he's probably a AAA. Brett Jackson.
Oh.
Reed Johnson.
My guy. Loved him.
Brian LaHare.
Oh, remember his first half? All-star?
Blake Lally. Rodrigo Lopez.
Oh, that guy.
Paul Mahome. Scott Main. Carlos Marmol.
Oh, boy.
Joe Mather. Blake Parker. Brooks Raley. Anthony Recker. Anthony Rizzo. Chris Rusin. James Russell. Jeff Samardzija. Dave Sapelt. Miguel Sikolich.
Sappy Sapelt.
Alfonso Soriano. Giovanni Soto. Ian Stewart. Luis Valbuena. Josh Vitters. Chris Volstad. Randy Wells. Kerry Wood. Travis Wood.
Chris Volstad was one of the worst starting pitchers for the Cubs ever. Ever. He was so bad.
So, other than there was some high plus players on this team too. I mean, well, take that back. Is you take away Dempster, who was 14 mil. Matt Garza was 9.5 mil. Marmol was 7 mil, and Soriano was 18 mil. Is you had all players that were like under $4 million a year players. Most of them were league minimum.
And by the end of 2013, only Anthony Rizzo was left, except for like Jeff Samardzija and Starlin Castro. Maybe Wellington Castillo. Yeah, he was around then. So you had some guys stick around for a little bit, but now it's just Anthony Rizzo. Because Starlin Castro was around for a while. We traded Samardzija in 2014. Wellington Castillo was traded, or he was designated for assignment, one of the two. But, I mean, most of those guys that we listed have been out of the league for years and basically only played a few games their entire career in 1 year.
Yeah, it was a bad roster. I mean, you look at that roster, you compare it to this White Sox roster, there's not a comparison. There's no comparison.
This White Sox roster is far and away better.
Yeah, because you have several players in this roster that are like on your 40-man roster that are part of your future. I mean, if you look at just the game day roster, like the your 25-man roster, you still have a Melky Cabrera, you have a Todd Frazier, you have a Jose Quintana, you have
Jose
Tim
Abreu?
Anderson, Jose Abreu. You've got players that none of them are Mike Trouts, but they're all players that bring you a plus WAR.
And Giovanni Soto, yeah, he's not nearly what he was his rookie year, but he still has the capability, as we've obviously seen, to be a 20 home run guy. Still decently productive.
Absolutely. I'm just looking at Wellington Castillo. He's still playing.
Yeah, he's with the Orioles now. He turned out to be a solid player. Not a great catcher, but he's a solid hitter. For a catcher.
I'm just looking up his WAR in 2012. He was a 1.2 WAR.
Oh, yeah, good for him. The other catcher we had, Steve Clevenger, didn't he turn into, because it was him and Scott Feldman that turned into Arrieta and Strop, right?
Absolutely.
And he was an absolute bum. Steve Clevenger,
he was
absolute
bad.
bum.
He was bad. But let's see, Blake DeWitt. He was a minus 0.5 WAR.
He came over in the Terrio deal in 2010.
The Riot.
Yeah, well, I didn't like him very much, Ryan Terrio. I was never a big fan of him, honestly.
No, me either. Yeah, that 2012 team, man. It's funny how quickly I forgot about all those players.
And keep in mind that guys like Matt Garza and Ryan Dempster and Giovanni Soto and Reed Johnson, they were all dealt at the trade deadline. And I remember watching the game when that all happened. It was the game before the deadline. They were blowing out the Pirates at home. And in the 6th or 7th inning, they were all getting pulled, and you saw them hugging in the dugout. So that means, those guys all got traded. I went to the game the next day. We lost 7-0 and were being no-hit well into the 8th inning. And that's when, like, a 35-year-old AAA, infielder named Adrian Cardenas stepped up and ripped a single into right field to end A.J. Burnett's no-hitter. So that was kind of interesting. But that night, it was supposed to be Dempster. It ended up being Casey Coleman, and he gave up a grand slam in the first inning. I mean, the roster after the trade deadline, the roster was bad enough, but after the trade deadline, whew.
Yeah, I mean, here's the WAR for each of those players. Darwin Barney was a 4.6 WAR that year.
Defense, man. That guy has a glove.
But let's see, 0, negative 0.4, 0, 0, 0, 0, negative 0.4, 0, 0, 0.9, negative 0.3. That was Adrian Cardenas. wait, where we go? 0, 1.2 for Wellington Castillo. Starlin Castro's a 3.4. 0, -1 for Clevenger. 0, 0, 1.6 for David DeJesus. -0.2, -0.3, 0, -0.2, 0, 0, 0, 0.1. Reed Johnson was a 0.8. Anthony Rizzo was a 2.2. Joe Mather was a -2. That's bad.
No, he got out. He started the season really good, and then he just dumped off.
Soriano was a 1.8. Josh Vitters was a -1.3.
Oh, that guy! Remember, he was our top prospect too.
Yeah, this was bad. This was a really bad team. It's so sad to think about that team.
It really is. And while we're on this topic, I'm going to bring this up really quick. Do you remember the 2013 team? A team that was strangely competitive yet still lost over 90 games because of how bad the bullpen was. That was also the same year both Castro and Rizzo just took major dives, but the team was being carried by Nate Shearholtz and Ryan Sweeney.
Yeah.
Offensive-wise. And Deanna Navarro.
Yeah, it was. Wasn't that the reason that they brought in what's his face? That's the manager for the White Sox.
Ricky Renteria the year after.
Yeah, didn't they bring him in to help make Castro better?
Yeah, because they figured that he speaks Latino and he works with Latino players, that would be of huge benefit for him, and he also worked well with the youth. So not only benefiting Castro, but also benefiting Rizzo, and it turned out that, it worked well. Let me tell you right now, there is no manager I think I despise even more than Dusty Baker, than Dale Swaim. I hated his guts.
Oh, me too. And I like Ricky Renteria. I felt
I do too.
That when they let him go, that was the worst that I've ever felt as a Cubs fan. And I understand why they did it, but it felt bad, and he handled it really well. And I
handled
know
it like a champ.
And I'm so glad that he's caught on and he's doing well, because
Me too.
He's a good manager. He's a good guy. And my favorite story is when he interviewed for the Cubs job. He had just had a hip replacement, so he couldn't put pants on, so he showed up in sweatpants.
Yeah, I agree with you on Ricky Renteria. I always liked him. I thought he did a good job for what he had. Yeah, I thought some of his in-game management wasn't great, especially with how he handled the bullpen, but overall, the way he coached the team, the way he worked on fundamentals, you could really tell that he was doing a good job. And he truly cares. Dale Swaim, one of the reasons I hated his guts, he seemed like he just didn't care. He just kind of moping around, just whatever. He drove me up a wall, let me tell you. And it's not because of the record, because Joe Madden couldn't make that team a winning team. But, I mean, I hated his work ethic. I hated his attitude. And I thought, they were hurting Starlin Castro and Anthony Rizzo that year.
Yeah, I even hated Dale Swaim when I was a kid, and I collected baseball cards, and just his stupid face with the stupid mustache on the Brewers, and I couldn't stand him. I would always, it's hilarious. I would put the cards with the teams, and I would put the players I liked on top of the teams, and Dale Swaim, I'd be like, right in the bottom. I hated him so much.
Yeah, and, this is really telling you something when I'm saying I disliked him more than Dusty Baker. I don't think we have to go there. We've had plenty of mediocre and bad managers here on the North Side, but in my lifetime, I think Dale Swaim really took the cake, at least in my memory. I know Don Baylor wasn't great. Jim Riggleman was decent. Lou Piniella was Lou Piniella, But
I love Don Baylor as a player. Loved Don, and so seeing him being a bad manager was not a good experience. But I loved him as a player.
Yeah, some people just aren't cut out to be managers.
Yeah, and it's funny when you're young, so you don't experience it. But when you're my age, I'm going to be 40 this year, is players that I watched, they're becoming managers.
Sure.
And you're like, I remember them as a player, and you have an opinion about them. When you're younger, you're like, oh, you don't have an opinion about a new manager if you've never seen them manage before, and you don't have any recollection of them as a player because it was well before your time. But now that they're starting to become, you're like, all right, I have a recollection of this player, like a clear recollection, and you carry that opinion over to them as a manager.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And the greatest players turn out to be some of the worst managers. If you look at the list of worst managers of all time, I can't remember who wrote the article, but most of the guys listed were Hall of Fame players. This included Ted Williams. This included Rogers Hornsby. So, it doesn't always work the same way on the field and behind the desk and in the dugout. I mean, people
Ted
your
Williams,
age.
to be fair, was a player manager, so you couldn't knock him all the way because he was
True.
a great player. So he
True.
managed himself really well, but the other half of his duties was not so hot.
Yeah, it is a tough situation, but, they always talk about how the best managers usually aren't the greatest players. There are a few exceptions, obviously, like a Tony La Russa or a Joe Torre. I mean, they were pretty good players, and they were pretty good managers. But
Yeah, I clearly remember Joe Girardi. I clearly remember Robin Ventura.
Oh, yeah.
And, you remember these people playing. Mike Scioscia. I remember Mike Scioscia. I was so proud of myself that I could read his name when I was a kid. Mike Scioscia. So
it's funny, you see him in Homer at the Bat as a player in that episode.
Yeah. But it's odd to see White Sox fans this year. They're like a weird, bizarro Cubs fans from like 2012, 2013, 2014, because they're watching their team, but they're way more interested in what they're doing in the minors.
Yeah, because we talked about the White Sox being not that horrible and not that good, kind of in the middle there. But either way, the Major League team itself really isn't that interesting.
No, they're not interesting at all. I mean, whether or not they're competitive, that's a moot point. They're just not interesting. My buddy that I mentioned quite a bit that is a season ticket holder for the White Sox, he hasn't messaged me about the White Sox on like the Major League team yet, which is really odd. But he's already texted me about Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech several times.
They're two big guys.
And it's hilarious because when the Cubs were in the same process, he kept saying, their prospects, they haven't proven anything. Just whatever they do in the minors doesn't translate to the pros, and poo-pooed everything. And when they started, when I'd be like, look, they're still doing well, he'd be like, well, they got the plaques ready for the Hall of Fame already. And so now that he's texting me about Yohan Moncada and Michael Kopech, and I heard that they already have Kopech's Hall of Fame plaque ready to go in Cooperstown. And he's like, just because he's on the White Sox doesn't mean he's going to suck. And he gets so mad. And I'm like, I'm literally pulling up old text and copying, pasting things you wrote and just changing it to this player.
Yep. It's really funny to see White Sox fans in this position because a lot of them from who I've encountered with are all kind of on the tank train. Like, they realize that losing is better. They don't get mad over losses because they know it's better for them.
Yeah. And, it's fun when your team is bad to be able to look at the future. Like, I mean, it's just giving you hope. When you're a bad team and you have no hope, you're basically a Bulls fan. When you're a bad team and you're looking at the young talent you have in the future, and you just, it's like being impoverished, but you have a lottery ticket and you're like, this could come up big, this could change everything. It gives you this sense of hope. And, so I'm not going to knock them. Yohan Moncada looked really good. I mean, granted, it's a week into the minor leagues. Michael Kopech has looked good.
He's looked very good.
But, they look very good, but it's a small sample size and it's minor leagues. I hope they turn out, for the White Sox fans' sake, I hope they turn out well. But, just temper your expectations. Odds are you're not going to have 2 Hall of Famers there.
Sure. Now, you bring up the whole when your team is bad and there's no hope kind of scenario. We remember back in 2011 when it was the last year of Jim Hendry. The payroll was massive and they were god awful. Those days were the worst. 2011, 2012. Massive payroll, garbage team, no future.
Yep. The minor league was just barren. Your top minor league prospects were garbage. You had
Brett
already...
Jackson and Josh Finners.
Yeah, you might be a little too young for this, but just being teased for so many years is, well, hold out hope. Felix PA is coming.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And, he just never materialized. You're like, he's a 5-tool guy. And he just never materialized. So it was disheartening. And then you're like, well, we have crap on the field. We've nothing in the minors. This is just a disaster. And then our hope suddenly became, we got Theo Epstein. That suddenly became the hope.
Mm-hmm.
And, then you're like, well, we drafted Albert Almora. I've heard good things. I'm reading good things about him. And then you suddenly start, I remember there was a dip in the hope when we didn't draft Mark Appel.
Oh yeah, I remember screaming at the TV when they took Chris Bryant. I'm like, what are you taking some frickin' third baseman for? We need pitchers. I literally yelled that at the TV.
Everybody was in shock, and that turned out to be a really smart choice. But again, that was the thing. It was like Mark Appel, he's the future. So it was, watching these things play out. It was good. It was suddenly you had hope once Theo came because of his track record, and Jim Hendry, very lovely man, but he just wasn't what the Cubs needed to go to the World Series and be a competitive team year in, year out.
It's funny you bring up Jim Hendry. I was reading an article recently about him, and, you could blame him for a lot of what happened at the end, but he was also under an extraordinary amount of pressure to go out and spend money from the Tribune Company. Now, when the Ricketts bought him in 2009, going to the 2010 season, Jim Hendry was still trying to scrap together a contending team that was clearly so far off from contending it wasn't even funny, and the moves may not have been right, but I'll never hate him because he did try, and even though his methods weren't great, especially at the end, it's not like he gave up or didn't care or was delusional. He really did try to make them better.
I'm trying to remember. There was, when he signed somebody, I forgot who it was, there's a story that he was like so deathly ill with a flu.
Ted Lilly.
Yeah, Ted Lilly. And he still managed to make this because it was so important to him. And he was so invested in what he did for this team. So a good guy, he wasn't a good enough general manager.
Right. And it's really funny when the Cubs hired Theo Epstein. I was a high schooler, kind of more of a meatball back then than I was now. And I think some people weren't as clear what he was trying to do, even though he stated it clear on day one. There was so much people speculating, all right, so we're going to go out and sign Pujols or Fielder? Are we going to go out and look for a top pitcher? Are we going to get like Tim Lincecum or so, like stuff like that? And we quickly realized that was not going to happen. I don't know if you remember any of that talk or banter.
Oh yeah, everyone was just dumbfounded when they had no interest in Albert Pujols and no interest in Prince Fielder, and look how smart those no moves were.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they're still saddled with Albert Pujols' massive contract in Anaheim, and he's not going to retire because that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and he wants to keep playing even though he's not where he used to be. I mean, he's still decently productive, but nowhere near his prime.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's nowhere near that. I mean, he was a dominant player, and now he's just a guy.
Best hitter of the 2000s in the National League, if you ask me. The best.
Yeah. And he still has, wow. So after this season, so he's got this season, he's making $26 million. He's got 2018, which he's going to make $27 million. He's got 2019, he's going to make $28 million. He's got 2020, he's going to make $29 million. And 2021, $30 million. Full no trade clause.
Yeah, that contract is kind of big, because that year the Angels went out and got him. They gave all that money to C.J. Wilson, and they gave all that money to Josh Hamilton. They brought those three guys in, and they had this big rally introduction for them, and people thought that they were going to waltz to the World Series, and they haven't come close.
Not only does he have those contracts left, but if he gets 3,000 hits, he gets a $3 million bonus. If he breaks the home run record, $7 million bonus. And then after his contract expires, he gets a $10 million personal services contract paid.
My goodness.
What a genius contract this was. So he has like 1, 2, 3, 4, like $150 million still left to be paid.
Jeez. That's ridiculous. Are the Angels still paying C.J. Wilson and Josh Hamilton? Because they signed pretty big deals, too. That's what I'd like to know.
I don't know. I have no idea. So let's see. 37. He's going to be at 41 or 42 when that contract expires.
That's nuts. I remember that offseason. Every day during school, when I had like a passing period or an off period or a lunch period, I would run to a computer and then I'd quickly look up, like baseball news or whatnot, either on Twitter or on Google. I didn't really use Twitter back then, but mainly on Google. And I'd keep checking to see if the Cubs signed Albert Pujols or Prince Fielder. I was like just waiting for it. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it was. I remember it was. I was Google every day, Cubs rumors. And, I guess that's what you expected back then is the Cubs would just sign a big name free agent and be marginally competitive, but not good enough to do anything. And that's the old way of thinking. So we've got the Bulls. I don't want to dwell on them, but they're right at the end of the season. 2 games left. They're tied with Miami. One of the teams is going to make it to the 8th seed. One of them is going to be out of the playoffs.
Miss Bulls, miss.
I know. That's what I'm thinking. I was trying to explain to my wife today. I was like, about why I don't want them to make the playoffs. And she didn't get it, but Dwayne Wade returned yesterday after what was said to be a season-ending injury and played fairly well. And then he ended up having to rest through the whole fourth quarter. And during that fourth quarter against the Nets, they blew a 6-point lead and just collapsed. And
against the Nets, no less.
Yeah. And Jimmy Butler's trying to play it off with the Nets have a good roster. And and everybody just stared at him blankly like, all right, Jimmy.
They have a D-League roster.
Yeah. And the thing is, statistically, there should be no way the Bulls miss the playoffs because they're tied with the Heat right now. But the Heat have the Cavaliers and the Wizards left. And the Bulls have the Magic and the Nets again. Both at United Center.
But you know what the Bulls do against those bad teams? They lose. They don't beat them. They only beat the good teams.
That was my point, is this Bulls team could just really go out there and lay eggs against the Magic and the Nets and not make the playoffs. And I think that's what they need to do. This is not a good team. And odds are, if they make the playoffs, that they're going to be playing the Cavs in the first round. And sure, they've beat them, they're 4-0 against them this season.
Yeah, that doesn't really mean much, but
that means nothing. Is LeBron James is going to come out there, and if he has to score 200 points, he will. And he's going to single-handedly destroy the Bulls. And
LeBron James, he doesn't play all out in the regular season. He really doesn't care about the regular season.
this is going to be a disaster, and it's the Bulls playoff tickets went on sale already, and I'm just like, why bother? Like, why? Who's buying these and why?
Oh, you know there are fans out there, the rah, let's go. It just... Look, if you want to be a loyal fan and you hope for the best for them, okay, I can't tell you not to, but you got to realize what a terrible position the Bulls are in right now. And any team that does that against the Nets, they should be automatically banned from the playoffs. I mean, I'm not kidding here. My other question is, are any of these games on TNT for the Bulls?
If there is, then somebody's in trouble because the Bulls don't lose or they're on TNT primetime games.
Do you know that my brother made up the official TNT Bulls hashtag?
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Nice.
And he just got his account verified, so now he's a blue check mark journalist.
Nice. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
you can follow him, Jason Pat, on Twitter. A little shout out to him.
Awesome.
We'll have to have him on this show sometime.
Yeah, anytime. So I don't really want to talk much more about the Bulls than that. But,
Neither do I.
The Stanley Cup playoffs are set. We know who's playing who, and we know that the Blackhawks have the number 1 seed in the conference, and they're going to be playing the Nashville Predators
Again.
I was sort of rooting for them to play Calgary, but it is what it is. So the matchups in the first round are going to be Blackhawks versus the Predators. The winner of that goes to play the winner of the Wild versus St. Louis, which I don't want either part of either one of those teams in the first round. Let them beat up on each other.
Neither do I.
Let them beat up on each other. Good.
Exactly.
Then it's going to be the Ducks versus the Flames and the Oilers versus the Sharks, which is going to be a fun series to watch.
It's probably the most intriguing for hockey fans is that series right there.
Montreal Rangers, I'm not intrigued by that one. Ottawa versus Boston could be good. Mm-hmm. Capitals versus Maple Leafs.
I like that one.
And then I think one that's going to be high scoring affair is Pittsburgh versus Columbus.
I think that's going to be the matchup that's going to intrigue most of the hockey fan base. First of all, a lot of hockey fans want Pittsburgh to lose. Second of all, a lot of people are very intrigued by this team that they have in Columbus right now. So I think you're going to see a lot of eyes on that one.
Yeah, it's going to be good. And I have a feeling that whoever wins that is going to beat the Capitals in round 2.
Most likely. That's what usually happens.
So, the Blackhawks lost their last 3 games, 4-3 in overtime to Colorado, which we all know Colorado just seems to have their number. Then there was the ugly 4-0 loss to Anaheim, which just got really, a lot of stars sitting for the Blackhawks, ugly loss, and a lot of cheap shots by Anaheim.
Well, that was what was ugly about it. The Ducks proved they're still that dirty, rotten team that they usually are.
Yeah, and then there was the loss, the 3-2 loss to the Kings, which, I'm not. The Blackhawks had their spot. They're resting guys. Whatever. I'm not going to focus on any of those losses.
And you could laugh at the Kings because they won't be in the playoffs again. So.
Yeah. So going into the playoffs, we got Nashville, which is a good matchup for us. If you're looking at best available matchups, that's a good one. So I expect, the fans will travel really well, and I'm curious to see what Nashville's going to try to do this year to keep Blackhawks fans out. So I don't know if have you ever made the drive down to Nashville?
No, I haven't. I know of all the rules they put in. I know all the regulations, but I've honestly never been to Nashville.
It's not a bad drive. It's like 6 hours or so, but it's an easy 6 hours. It's very scenic. You don't hit, once you get out of Chicago, you don't hit any traffic. You can just coast, and you're driving through like horse fields, and like it's just a pretty drive. It's maybe 5 hours. It's not that bad. but I actually interviewed for a job, and the owner of the CEO of the company is also the owner of the Predators. So the room I had the interview with was in the Predators conference room.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
They had game-worn autographed jerseys of like their best players all over the walls, and I just couldn't let well enough alone, and I was just like, I'm a Blackhawk fan. Boom. Didn't get that job, but it was okay. But we also have Brian Bickle retiring.
Real good story, really emotional. I feel so bad for him.
I feel like a bad person because I said a lot of terrible things about him when he stopped playing well after he got that
I'm
contract.
right there with you.
And, you know, like, who would have guessed that he had MS? That, you know, you just, you know, you feel bad. Like, he was a very nice guy. And
Very nice guy.
And before that contract, he played great for the Blackhawks and just, you know, just had something he was born with and finally manifested. You know, you just feel bad. You hope that he's able to fight off the long-term effects of the disease, you know, for as long as possible.
I hope he could find something to do with the Blackhawks in the future. You know, maybe be part of the organization somehow. I would really, really like to see that. I mean, the guy's won, what? Has he won all three? I think he's won all 3 cups here. Because he was there in 2010. He didn't play much. His main contributions were for 2013, but he's been around and he's been part of these cup runs. So I think he deserves some recognition with the organization, despite the fact that after he signed that long contract, he really wasn't good at all. But the kind of guy he was, the kind of big moments he did have in the playoffs, you need to. He deserves recognition. I really do. I really do feel that way.
Yeah, so he was there for 2015, 2016. He was 2010, 2011. He played 78 games that season.
It's easy to forget that. It really is.
So, yeah, it would be, you know, can you imagine, you know how the Blackhawks at games, they'll have like old players that come and sign autographs in the mezzanine or whatever, in the lobby. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine the line of people if they brought Brian Bickle in?
With these circumstances especially, and I think a lot of fans would be willing to give him a lot of love for the way he's fought through this so courageously, and he deserves it.
Yeah, you feel bad for him, and I wish him nothing but the best of luck, and you know, so it's just a sad story.
It is. And, you know, I am confident no matter what he does after his NHL career is over, that he will find a good career elsewhere, whether it's in hockey or not, but he will. He'll be fine. He's not going to be going hungry without a job. He will have a lot of support.
Oh, yeah, and he has he signed a big contract, so he's got some money there.
That too.
You know, you imagine probably he and his wife, Amanda, are going to keep up. They have their charity that they run, the charity organization, and he's got
which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and he's got a couple of kids, so I'm sure he's going to be plenty busy, keeping himself busy. But it would be nice for the Blackhawks to bring him back as like an ambassador, or even for something like Fan Fest, where they have him out there just meeting players. Because, you know, honestly, there's a lot of, you know, after all the badness with the end of old man Wirtz's life, you know, end of his life, with how much animosity between he and the fans, and the blackouts on TV, is there absolutely were a lot of new fans into hockey that were turned away or not interested at all because of old man Wirtz. And, you know, so you can have, you know, big players from the 60s and 70s, and but, you know, not a lot of the newer fans it's going to resonate. But a Brian Bickle, that resonates with everybody. Anybody that's a Blackhawks fan, Brian Bickle resonates with. They know that player. So it's you know, you're going to have a lot of interest in meeting a guy like that.
Sure, absolutely. Dead on.
So I don't know if have they announced the the schedule for the games yet?
I know it's going to start Thursday, but I don't know the exact schedule. It will be nice that this time we'll have home ice advantage. The first 2 games will be at home because the Hawks haven't had home ice advantage in the first round since 2013. And this will only be, I think it's the 3rd time since 2010 that they've had home ice, because they had it in 09 against the Flames. They had it against the Predators in 2010, didn't have it in 11, didn't have it in 12, had it in 13, and opened on the road in 14, 15, 16. So it'll be nice to see again.
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to look it up quick because I thought they were announcing it today, but I haven't seen it. Wow, you think it would be easier to find? Maybe they haven't announced it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen any official schedules yet, but maybe I just have to dig around. I'm sure that the NHL will tweet out some stuff tomorrow.
Yeah, it's definitely Thursday. And I saw a funny, I forgot which one of the Blackhawks blogs posted it, but they were like, the NHL commissioner announces that all Blackhawk and Nashville Predator fans are excited about the 8:52 p.m. starting time of all games.
No.
He just doesn't care. He really doesn't.
No, he really doesn't. I kind of chuckled when I saw that, because I'm like, you couldn't be more wrong.
Oh, here we go. I think this is it. Load. Oh, come on. They are really hiding this. All right, never mind. We'll keep you posted. We'll tweet it out.
Absolutely.
So I guess the last thing we'll bring up, not too much Bears news, but the Bears did sign cornerback B.W. Webb from the Saints. And I went, who? I was not. I don't know if you were familiar with B.W. Webb. I was not.
I really wasn't that familiar with him either, to say the least.
But I pulled up his stats, and last year he recorded 61 tackles, which would have made him 3rd on the Bears last year behind Jarrell Freeman and Harold Jones-Corte. He had 2 interceptions, which would have made him tied for 1st with Porter and LeBlanc on the Bears. And he had 14 pass breakups, which would have made him 1st on the Bears. So you're like, all right, well, I've never heard of this guy, but clearly he's a step up from whatever the Bears have at cornerback.
Yeah, so welcome aboard, Webb.
Which makes me think that this close to the NFL draft, which is going to start 2 weeks from Thursday, that they already have just sheer ungodly numbers of cornerbacks, and that they're turning some of the cornerbacks into safeties, and they sign another one that you probably do not expect them to sign or to draft, like a Marshawn Lattimore or any of the cornerbacks with that number 3 pick. I think that's not on their radar right now.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you saw this, but there was an article written with an interview with Dirk Cutter. He was previously the offensive coordinator in Atlanta for Matt Ryan, and then he became the offensive coordinator in Tampa, and now then was the head coach. And he had some very strong comparisons between Matt Ryan and Mike Glennon.
I think I heard something about that, but I didn't really know the details at all, so.
And it's, of course you're going to wax highly about a former player of yours that left on good terms. But the fact that the second highest bidder from all accounts was Tampa to keep him as the backup, and they offered him a lot of money to be the backup. That's one of those things that just makes me feel better about the signing. I don't feel great about the signing, but it makes me feel a little bit better, a little shimmer of hope.
Sure.
Whatever makes you happy, it's gonna still suck.
We'll see, I guess. It's almost like at the point right now we're in that dead zone where NFL free agency that startup date has passed, and right now not a lot's happening. We're 2 weeks away from the draft, so we're just kind of in that dead zone right now where I'm not really thinking about it as much. But I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah, there's like a dead zone right now, but you'll see after the draft, you'll see people kind of trying to fill some holes in their roster with available free agents. You'll also have teams start designating post, June 1st cuts. You can designate them early. It used to be June 1st was that cut date. Now you can designate them as a June 1st cut, and you'll see some veterans that are not willing to renegotiate their contract or whatever that are cut, and they'll be moving teams. But right now is pretty much a dead zone as far as NHL or NFL talk.
Right. Yeah.
But we have the last of our scouting of the players in the draft. So every week from basically the Super Bowl to this week, we've taken one position in the NHL draft and scouted a bunch of the players. And the way I do it is I watch actual game film, not highlights or anything, but actual game film, every single snap that the player's involved for an entire game. And then I watch several games over the last season and try to get, a sense of what traits I like, what I don't, and how I think they'll transition to the NFL. And so if there's players that you guys want to see me cover before the draft, hit us up. This week was probably the most active that we've gotten requests. And this was quarterbacks, and not surprising. The first one that was requested was Josh Dobbs, 6'3", 216 out of Tennessee. I honestly didn't know anything about Josh Dobbs. I don't watch a lot of SEC football, and I especially don't watch a lot of Tennessee football. But seeing him on game film, I was actually pleasantly surprised. He's got a really compact release, really smart guy, not just football smarts, but apparently his major is aerospace engineering. He's got decent arm strength, definitely above average NFL wise. He's a senior in the SEC with solid stats. That's got to count for something. A good completion percentage at 63%, and his touchdown to interception ratio is over 2-1. Athletic, he can run. He's not a running quarterback though, but he definitely can run. And
kind of like a Jay Cutler.
More somewhere between Jay Cutler and Russell Wilson.
Okay.
He definitely made a lot of plays with his feet, but he was definitely looking to throw first. And he actually, if you watch him, he goes through read progressions, which is a dying thing as far as college goes. But the cons I have on him are almost all of the snaps I saw were from a shotgun, not very much under center at all. His body sizes looks really thin, frail. I mean, he's 6'3", 216. He's fast enough, but in the NFL, I don't think he's fast enough to break off the runs he did at Tennessee. And some of his footwork's a little wonky. He threw a lot of short passes, but he does have a nice touch on the deep balls, but they're mostly really archy. But where he had his interceptions were on those intermediate to deep balls. That's where his footwork, his mechanics kind of break down a little bit. Honestly, I did not expect much from him because there's literally no buzz about Josh Dobbs, but I was pretty impressed. He didn't develop a ton from over his 4 years at Tennessee, which you kind of expect that to happen, to more development, but he didn't. He sort of plateaued. But he has all the tools to be a solid quarterback. Quarterbacks are really hard to gauge in the NFL draft because people reach for them, but he's probably going to be somewhere from a 4 to a 7, and I think anywhere in that range, he's a good value.
Yeah, it's kind of what they're saying here. Later round guy, but maybe a buried treasure.
Yeah, I think he's got all of the tools. It's just like every quarterback. There's not a quarterback including Peyton Manning, that came out of the draft that didn't have to work really hard to get better to be the caliber that they're at in the NFL. So Josh Dobbs has his work cut out for him, but he's got all the tools. He's got the smarts to be able to see the defenses and read it. He's got the arm, and he's got the athleticism to move the pocket, roll out, to run if a open lane is there. It's just putting it all together. Next is Davis Webb. This was a request from Young Future, who's a listener of ours and a blogger. And Davis Webb is 6'5", 230 out of Cal. The pros I have on him are he is supremely confident in his arm. He's got really good NFL height at 6'5". He had a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, a gunslinger mentality, athletic enough to elude defenders and move the pocket. Think like Big Ben, how he's able to move out and roll out, but not you're not expecting him to run. Cons I have on him are his throwing motion is a little bit long, a little bit loopy, and he's a little bit too gunslingery. You like that confidence in his arm, but he's a little too confident. We'll try to throw it anywhere. Gets a little bit too loosey-goosey with the ball in the pocket. Think Jay Cutler when he's trying to elude traffic in the pocket. He puts the ball in one hand and drops it low. Doesn't always step into his throws. Mostly came out of the shotgun. He will lock onto a receiver, and he rifles way too many passes that he should put some finesse on. He was previously at Texas Tech, but lost his job to Pat Mahomes, who's in this draft as well, and he transferred to Cal. The guy has the raw ability, but he has a lot of kinks to work out of his mechanics. I think he's going to go much earlier in the draft than he deserves to go because teams think they'll be able to mold him, but he reminds me a lot of like a Brock Osweiler. Anything you want to add?
No, you pretty much summed it up.
Next is another request from Young Future. This is Brad Kaya, 6'4", 214 out of Miami. The pros I have on him are he's a pro-style passer, knows how to read progression, uses his slide step really well to mask his lack of athleticism and speed in the pocket. Good ball security in the pocket, keeps it high and tight. But his accuracy is basically Jekyll and Hyde. One game, you'll just watch him reel off 10, 15 passes in a row. It look great, and then you'll just see bounced passes sailing over people's head. So Jekyll and Hyde ball accuracy and ball placement. And he can look a little bit robotic out there. Lack of athleticism, not a great arm. Throws beyond 10 yards have a pretty low completion percentage. He's nothing more than a backup in the NFL as far as I'm concerned. I had liked him early, but when I dug into the tape, I was really turned off.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk here about inconsistency, so kind of goes with your Jekyll and Hyde idea.
I'm not a big fan of Brad Kaya. Next is Nate Peterman. This was another request from Young Future. 6'2", 226 out of Pitt. Pros on him, only 7 interceptions and 306 attempts versus 27 touchdowns. He looks in full command of the offense, worked under the center, which is really rare. I think he was like the only one in this draft that did it. Looks really poised in the pocket. He reads his progression, but his mechanics aren't that great. He's too willing to throw it unorthodox. And I'm not sure how big his arm is, but he has, I don't know how to quantify it, but he's got this it factor. And he has a lot of work to do to make it in the NFL, but I like him a lot. And I think he can be really molded. And I think ultimately he could be a middle of the pack starter, like a Joe Flacco-ish level starter. Not a superstar, but not terrible either. I like him a lot. Couple guys left. Next is Deshaun Watson, 6'2", 221 out of Clemson. Pros I have on him are he's a winner, absolute leader of men.
Yes, he is.
He definitely has all the intangibles. Produced really well at every single level, stands tall in the pocket, will take that hit to make the throw, protects the ball well, but he really lacks pocket awareness. Guys will come in from his blind side and just demolish him. He doesn't even see it coming. He lobs too many throws. He played nearly exclusively out of the shotgun. He threw 17 interceptions, and complex defenses confuse him like crazy. And the notes I have on him are, I'm not trying to knock the guy, but for every person who wants to anoint him because of the game against Alabama, I just counter with, look at the tape he put against Troy when they bracketed all of his receivers and he just fell apart. He didn't know what to do. So he has all of the factors to be a good quarterback, but he also has a lot of flags that make me worried that he could be a bust.
There's a lot of talk about him, and the guy clearly has the drive and the winning mentality. We'll see what happens. I hope he does well in the NFL wherever he ends up. I really, really hope he does. He's the guy who is very easy to root for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm not going to root against him. I like him. I'm just scared of him. If the Bears were to take him, some scenario where the Bears take best available player at number 3, and then they go on to move back into the first round, and they are able to get him somewhere around 20. All right, I'm on board because I can work with you there. At number 3, you need somebody that's just a home run, and there's much safer picks on defense than there are with Deshaun Watson. 3 more guys. Next is Deshaun Kaiser, 6'4", 233 out of Notre Dame. Very athletic, can do a lot of damage with his feet. He's got good field vision as a runner, will use his blockers really well. He throws really well when he's rolling out, and he's got a big arm. But the cons I have from him is throwing motion is too big. It's not a compact throwing motion. He gets a little loose with the ball sometimes. He tends to throw behind receivers a lot on crossing patterns. He trusts his arm strength over mechanics, which is very Jay Cutler-ish. He'll get locked on a receiver and stick with him. And he got benched mid-season, and his completion percentage is a little low for me. But I think the guy would have been better served to go back to Notre Dame for the most part, except for the fact that he didn't have a very good team around him, and that may have hindered him. I could see that possibly being the reason he came out. But the kid has a big NFL arm, but a lot to do. And just like every single quarterback in this draft, I think he's a project. But I ultimately think he's going to be the best of the bunch. And I'm not sure how much that says, but I think he's going to be the best of the bunch.
There's a lot of people high on him from what I know, and there's a lot of talk about where he's going to be drafted. Some people say they like Deshaun Watson better. Some people think they like him better. So it's another thing where I'm just going to say we'll wait and see what happens.
2 more guys. Next is Mitch Trubisky, 6'2", 222 out of North Carolina. He's got a decent build as far as his size. He extends the play in the pocket with his athleticism. When came out of high school, he was noted as I don't know if you've ever read the scouting reports of high school players, but it lists quarterbacks as either pocket quarterbacks or dual threats. And he was listed as a dual threat. Great completion percentage in 2016. He threw 68% completion, which is great. Read progressions are good. Nice arm strength, decent speed when he runs. But he's another shotgun-only quarterback. Doesn't have very good pocket awareness. He needs to learn to throw the ball away. He always will try to make a play in the last minute. He's too willing to float passes, which you'll see defenders be able to, in the NFL, come in and intercept or knock away. And he was only a 1-year starter. And when the pressure's on, he carries the ball way too low. The note I put on him is, if he's at his best in the NFL, he's Matt Stafford. If he's not at his best, well, he could be pretty bad. I like the talent he has, but as far as these quarterbacks, he's the ultimate boom or bust for me. And the last guy is Pat Mahomes, 6'2", 225 out of Texas Tech. This guy had insane stats. 5,000 plus yards passing, 66% completion, 41 touchdowns, NFL build, fast enough run if you leave him open. His completion percentage increased every single year. The big worry for me is he a system quarterback? He gets a little too confident in his arm. He's got inconsistent mechanics, and he carries the ball way too low in the pocket. Think Jay Cutler, Bernie Kosar type. But this kid is going to give fans of whatever team draft him fits. Because on a good day, he's Brett Favre. And on a bad day, he's bad Jay Cutler. So you are going to see a roller coaster city with him. But he's got talent. And you just hope that you can work with him and make him to be like the Brett Favre caliber versus, frustrated Jay Cutler, where you're like, he's got all this talent, but he just never materialized. So that's it for the quarterback. So if there's any player that you guys are interested in that we didn't cover, definitely let us know via Twitter, at Swerski Sports or at ShyFanPat1, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Hit us up and let us know what player you'd want to see, and we'll definitely look into them. And then once the Bears make their selections, if we haven't covered the player that the Bears drafted, that is a busy weekend for me, and I go through and I watch tons of game film about the players the Bears drafted to give you a preview of what I think of their draft. And I guess the last thing I want to talk about is I did a quick I accidentally deleted it. Never mind. Next week we'll do Mock Draft 3.0. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Alex?
Well, I just want to bring up this quick thing. My pure excitement for tomorrow night at Wrigley Field. I'm not going to be there, but I will be watching. It's going to be very historic, because how often do we say we raise a championship banner at Wrigley Field?
Yeah, it's going to be emotional. Like, I honestly think back of how emotional I got when they won the title, and now I've had time to process it and process my feelings about it, and it's kind of, the excitement level's still there, and I'm still happy, but I've settled back into reality, and to get brought back to this it's gonna be a good emotional roller coaster.
It almost feels like the season doesn't truly start until this happens. I know we've played 6 games. I know we're 4-2 right now. But it just doesn't feel right until we see this happen. And after this happens, after we see the banner go up, after Wednesday when we see the rings given out, really that fully and utterly completely wraps up that 2016 championship. Now we can truly focus on this year. Because look, we will always love the memories of 2016. They'll always be a part of us. But I don't want to become the person who's talking about the 2016 team 10 years later after nothing else happened.
You mean like the 85 Bears?
Right, exactly. We don't want to... the 85 Bears team is one of the best football teams in history, but the fact that we're still talking about it so much shows that nothing else has happened. We haven't won any championships since that. We don't want to be like that.
No. And so it's going to be fantastic to watch them get the rings. And I just wonder, Dexter Fowler apparently said that he didn't want to get his ring FedExed to him. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do when St. Louis comes to Chicago next.
Because I think they got to play another series in St. Louis first before that happens.
So it's actually my birthday weekend when they come to town. So it's going to be my birthday June 2nd. So June 1st is the first time St. Louis comes to Chicago.
I would imagine it's that date.
So I would imagine that day, unless they want to wait till the Saturday to make it
Oh, maybe.
But yeah, it'll be that weekend then, and it'll be interesting to see what they do for Dexter Fowler.
Sure. It really will be. I mean, it'll be his first time back at Wrigley Field since he was a member of the Cubs, and obviously they're probably going to have a little tribute to him in addition to the ring. I'd have a feeling they'll have a little video montage or some little ceremony or just kind of speech or whatnot at the beginning of the game. They'll definitely be doing something, whether it's that Friday or that Saturday, and that's probably my guess when they're going to present the ring to him.
Yeah, and do it early so then we can boo him the rest of the game.
Well, I won't boo him, but I'll be kind of over the Dexter Fowler nostalgia. Look, I'll always like the guy. I'll always be thankful for what he did. But after he gets his ring, I'm like, okay, I'll be over the nostalgia and be like, he's a St. Louis Cardinals player. That's what he is.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe on however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Make sure you share it with your friends and give us any feedback you have. And thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna.
Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.